share with you the fairly new campus that we have here at Art House. The bias well is complete. That is phase 1. It is capturing all the runoff that will save our waterways. And we are in progress with phase 2 to realize a outdoor classroom, art, and respite for the community. If you want more information, just let us know, and we can let you know how other ways that you can get involved. We are thrilled to be introducing Kevin Jerome Everson this evening. Kevin has had an extremely prolific career, which is difficult to condense into a short introduction. His work has been extensively featured in solo group exhibitions and film festivals all over the world. A few examples include the Sundance Film Festival, the Tate Modern in London, the Centre Pompidou Paris, the Carnegie International in Pittsburgh, and the Whitney Biennial in New York. His films have been streamed, produced in DVD box sets, and are held in museums and film archive collections. A very long list of awards, fellowships, and residencies include the South Korea Hongseong International Film Festival Creative Award, the Guggenheim, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Ohio Arts Council Fellowships, and the Medal of Merit alumni from Ohio University. He has curated exhibitions, lectured, and participated in many symposia. Kevin has produced over 200 films that range from under 2 minutes to 8 hours in length. Titles include Park Lanes, Shiesty, Sugar-Coated Arsenic with co-director Quadrino Harrell, and Traveling Shoes. Using found footage, portraiture, documentary, and reenactment, his work often focuses on labor, working class communities, and the second great migration of African Americans between 1940 and 1970. Kevin was born in Mansfield, Ohio. He received his BFA from the University of Akron, his MFA from Ohio University. He is a professor of art at the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. Please welcome Kevin Everson.
Well, thanks big time, and I'm very moved by being here, and you know, I got a lot of family here. Got my old professor, Michael Lodestad here, a good friend of mine and stuff, and Bill Busta's here. Oh man, this is great. So anyways, this is all moving, and so good being back. But anyway, yeah, so I just want to, so I guess it's going to talk about my working practice as like an artist, and then my influences and stuff, and then I like to show this particular picture, a scene when I was a 5-year-old making art in Stadium Elementary School. But my aunt, we were talking about this earlier, my aunt used to work at the newspaper in Mansfield, Ohio, so apparently she got me and my brother's cousins, and just like, these photographs, but then I went back and figured out these photographs. But these were kind of propaganda, kind of integrated, like integration pictures, so to speak. And then this picture was published in 1970, December for like Christmas 1970. And then in April was the Supreme Court ruling for busing. So it kind of puts it in kind of a time thing. But you know, I was born and raised in Mansfield, Ohio, and which is exactly 88 miles from the lake. When we were young, there was more jobs than people. You know, most of our families used to work at the the factories and stuff. There was a GM plant there. My uncle Shep worked there. Westinghouse I used to work at. All kinds of tap-in. What else? Mansfield Tire. It looked like Empire Detroit Steel. You know, so it's all these kind of jobs, and then everything started to close up. And Mansfield had a kind of I think it was like 30-something% African American, and it's a very, I always like to use the Malcolm X, and I think it's a Malcolm X quote, is that the Mason-Dixon line is the Canadian border, because I think east of the Mississippi, and maybe west of Mississippi, I think America is more southern than it is northern. And then, so most of the African Americans from Mansfield, Ohio, were from Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, and most of the whites were from Kentucky and West Virginia. So you had this kind of like southern kind of mentality and stuff. just like 88 miles from Cleveland, or from the lake area, so to speak. So anyway, so that's kind of my kind of background, whatever stuff. You see that massive, and now it's cranking out those white Santa Claus like crazy back in the day. Still am. So where was Bill busted at? So you want to like sell him? So anyway, but anyway, I'm talking about my influences and stuff. A couple of things. I grew up, I was like, I could barely do anything in school. I was just a jock and stuff. And then I always wanted to go to college. So I went to the University of Akron. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then so I had a camera, so I started taking art classes, and then I started kind of digging it. And then so I started kind of being good at it, I guess. Thanks to people like Michael Loderstadt, Penny Rakoff, Andrew Borowick, Bob Huff, Don Harvey. Who else was? Yeah. So they were like more influences on me at the University of Akron than my grad school at the time. And then when I moved up to Cleveland, there was still influence on how I kind of make art stuff. But the kind of several things that kind of just kind of influenced my artwork. And the picture on the left is I don't know who took the picture, but that's my cousin Bobby Clark on 6th Street, I think. And I remember my Uncle Winky. I remember going to my brother's graduation in '81. I remember Uncle Wink was taking pictures of my brother Kenny and brother Chris and all those other and the kids and stuff. And then I remember him saying that he tilted the camera and said, "I'm gonna make this one look like art." And so I always thought that you have to announce art. Because you can't just show up, I'm going to make some art. Yeah, you got to tell everybody you got to make some art. So then the whole idea of understanding with the kind of the strong dynamic line, the diagonal lines, the whole idea of how that was kind of influencing art. And then the other one is one of my favorite artists, probably one of the top 12 artists this country's ever produced, is the comedian Richard Pryor from Peoria, Illinois. And so we didn't really have, growing up, we didn't really have art in the house, but we did. And I didn't really think about it, because African American culture, we had music, and also comedy was big too as well. So, and then the super talent Richard Pryor. So I remember that, Pryor had all these so-called blue albums in the house, but they didn't kind of censor them from us. We just listened to them, because I think they knew that these things were kind of important in art objects, so to speak. So, but why I started, what Pryor was doing and stuff was interesting. So he would talk about the minor characters. So I'm going to kind of tell this blue joke. Hey, I don't know, it's going to go over well. My brother's laughing already. But he's got this kind of bit about Dayton. About Dayton and stuff. And then so he was oh man, so he had to just joke about cunnilingus. Just kind of soften the blow, because it's the kids here. They know what it is. But anyway, so but anyway, he said but then he was telling this joke. He said he talked about cunnilingus, and then he said he had an uncle. He said his uncle would say, "Boy, just whatever you do, don't do that." Whatever. And Pryor paused and said, "I couldn't wait to do that because my uncle's been wrong about everything in his life." And so I like that one sentence definition of that cat, because because you can because that that kind of narrative, that kind of structure of making that kind of narrative of introducing the minor character and then going to the major was very important to me. So Pryor was that a lot. He makes those, so then that one sentence definition of an individual is very important. And then I make these kind of short films, so the films aren't really kind of narrative, so to speak, but there's elements in it that are kind of narrative, and those small details can kind of bring out the kind of the narration, so to speak. And then another artist, actually from Illinois too as well, Lorena Hansberry, and then the one of my, she died so young, but the one of my favorite pieces of art is Raisin in the Sun. And I remember, and my brother probably won't remember this, but I remember we were watching the Otto Preminger film before because I saw multiple variations of the play, but the Otto Preminger film is pretty good, and it's pretty close to the play. And I remember me and my brother were up late kind of watching it, and then what she does, it was so roller coaster of emotions going through that play that it was just exhausting but beautiful at the same time. So I kind of like that as a kind of formal structure of kind of bringing the viewer back and forth through these kind of emotional cues, so to speak, and stuff. So like with Lorraine Herron and the Hansberry is really good for that. And these other two artists too, people know, are Bootsy Collins and George Clinton. Bootsy Collins from Cincinnati, Ohio, and George Clinton from Plainfield, New Jersey. And then, so back in the 70s and stuff, we're a totally funkadelic family. My cousin Butch would play Bootsy all day long. And Kenny, I was, I was just completely from like, maybe like, like the calendar year would be like the Funkadelic album would come out in August and the Parliament album would come out in December. So just kind of like, there's the only two albums I had throughout the whole year. And then so, but then the whole idea of what Clinton and Bootsy were doing is where they kind of made this space, that they created this kind of atmosphere with the kind of sonic and the outfits and the stage performances, just kind of creating this other world. And I remember going to the Mothership Connection concert and stuff, and I just wanted to get on the Mothership. I didn't give a fuck what was going on. I just like, take me with you, whatever, so to speak. So, but then also it gave you the space to imagine. So I know people, like, I know these younger artists now, they talk about Afrofuturism, so to speak. And for me, it's like that kind of Afro past and stuff. But then the fact that what they were doing and stuff was actually groundbreaking. And it actually had a lot of influence on how I, like, approach kind of objects and elements, so to speak. And these two artists too, Official and Vice. This was a show that was at the Wexner Center long, 93? Yeah, it was a while ago. And it was a thing called Room Under the Stairs. And so what Official and Vice do is that, they make everything. So you go behind, like at the Wexner Center, you go behind the stairs, and I've seen multiple iterations of their work. And then, so they carve all the stuff out of polyurethane and paint it, whatever. So you look through this glass and you see the infrastructure of the museum. And I remember my buddy Craig Drennan, we went to a show in New York once, and then, those old Soho galleries opened up like the elevator, and then it had ladders and paint. So me and my buddy Craig was the only one who walked off the elevator. Everybody else thought that the show wasn't show change, but everything was like art hours, so to speak. But the thing what I like about it is that the way they place the objects has this kind of narrative function, so to speak. So I've used this slide a lot. So you have these objects that look like paint cans, but they make sure that this object, the green paint goes up to here. So it has a kind of a backstory. So just these kind of small elements where like the Richard Pryor does and what Official and Vice do, that kind of has these kind of elements of kind of narration, so to speak. So these are the kind of things that influenced me. And this is a piece that I saw recently up in Detroit. I don't know if anybody's been to Detroit on Grand River Plaza up there, but this guy Davos, he has a whole, he has one of those things where he has a whole block where he paints stuff. He paints the house and all kind of stuff like that. And so I took this picture, and I intentionally, walked around all this stuff and stood right here so I can get this kind of contrast between, and it's a great title, Iron Showing Rock How to Rust. And then so I like these kind of paint cans and these kind of stumps are formally the same, but conceptually, these kind of things. So for me, like this is a film edit. So I'm going to talk about film editing and stuff as well. So this whole idea of having something begin and stop, like right here. So it's kind of like, and then it's still old school, like the kind of montage theory. It just may have A and B, and then they create C. Together. So that's what I kind of do. So sculpturally, this kind of does that for me, so to speak. So these are kind of things that are kind of influence stuff. Oh, and here's something my brother and I laughed too as well. This is me here, and my cousin Bobby, JC, LA, Bay Wick, DC, and PDQ. I'm the only one who didn't have a nickname growing up. So. But anyway, so Kenny Norris, a friend of mine, she took this picture, and the reason I show this image is because from Mansfield, Ohio, and then so I left home when I was like, just went to college when I was 18. So I go back, my son was always there and stuff, and I always go back. And so, it's kind of story, but my son's mom, my friends would always tell me stuff. It was like, and then it would frustrate me. It'd say, hey, Kevin, Pooh Black. It's like, I don't know Pooh Black. Kevin, you know Pooh Black. I do not know Pooh Black. And just go back and forth. And then so after like 20 minutes, it's like, anyway, and then they get to the story, right? And it's basically like the 3-act play, like you do like a kind of a film. You have the setup, you have what throws a character into chaos, the second act, and then your third act is the resolution. But apparently I do this, and like I realized this about 4 or 5 years ago, that when I make films, I don't give the setup neither. Like I don't. Like I got everybody like, Kevin, who's Blue Black? Yeah, So yeah, I do that too. Like I usually, so the films always kind of start, and it throws the viewer automatically into chaos. Because I don't like the setup, whatever, so to speak. So I think when you write, I don't do a lot of narrative. I am part of the WGA. I should be holding up a picket sign. But I wrote a couple of narrative scripts. But I like, again, like, teach like script writing. There's the situation and the story. The situation is the cat sleeping on the blanket, and I like that. I mean, I like cats. I like blankets. I can watch that shit all day. But the story is the cat sleeping on the dog's blanket, the potential for conflict and stuff like that. But I like the cat sleeping on the blanket, so to speak. So, but then the viewer has to kind of add in their own backstory, so to speak. So I like kind of structuring things like that. So it just when all my friends back home, my son's mom would kind of frustrate me, like, I don't know that person. And then I kind of do that too as well. Like I don't give the viewer the setup. And then so I always kind of structure the film where the people on screen are smarter than the audience. And then so the people have to, so the audience has to kind of catch up, so to speak, yeah. So these are kind of influence. But also too, this kind of artwork, just like I was doing, I think Michael Ostad would know this, because it's when I got a grad, because my degrees are in fine art photography, actually. And so I was a street photographer, like in the genre of Robert Frank, Gary Winogrand, Roy DeCarver, and Diana Arbus. And so I just like to shoot people, like photograph people in the street, so to speak. But after I got out of grad school stuff, I started working with this camera called the Wide Lux, and it's 35 millimeter camera. It shoots 35 millimeter film. Instead of like 36 frames on a roll of film, it gets like 21. And the lens, just when you push the shutter, the lens moves. So it makes it kind of panoramic like image like this. I'm gonna show about 4 or 5 of these. So it creates this kind of image, and so it's basically it's a kind of a like it's not real in a weird way because the vent over here always slightly happens before the vent over here because the lens is constantly moving. And then so when I was like using this as for street photography, like I was kind of framing up, and then I'm trying to like look for, and then so like the camera's a verb, so it like moves, so to speak. So I feel like I was always privileged of making art, and then so the stuff I was kind of framing was I was photographing either African Americans or people of African descent, either making, performing, or holding objects of representation. Like they were in the action of making art with me as well. Like what this individual was making, like a photograph, these kind of homemade signs, the whole idea of art. Like there's some kind of participation of art that was going on within the structure of the picture, but also through the snapshot. And then camera, if anybody knows about kind of cameras and lenses and stuff, it has like a 17 millimeter lens, so it's super wide. So I could touch this particular person, like probably my hand can kind of go behind her, so to speak, so I can touch her. So the super wide angle lens, so to speak. And then so these are the kind of stuff that I was photographing for probably about 10 or 12 years. Let me show a few of these, whatever. I shot this in South Carolina. And then I was sitting on a porch and I saw this kid carrying this drum up the street. And I was like, oh man, this guy's gonna make us some art. No matter what the art was, I was all excited. And so anyway, so I just kind of framed up, always have the element of a snapshot in there, and then I kind of like this woman, kind of like her, like kind of gorgeous neck, and she kind of goes back into the frame with this line. So it's all kind of formally composed, whatever. This is Knoxville. This is during the, of course, there's always been police shootings and stuff, and even in Knoxville when I was there, police shootings. So this is a very contentious city council, like the meeting, and then the camera had like 3 shutter speeds. 2/50 of a second, 1/25, and a 15th of a second. So the 15th of a second for interior, so is why you get this kind of blur. And then like the whole idea with the orator, so to speak, so somebody speaking, and this is another image. Yeah, and then so as I started making more of these, I started kind of fragmentating the body. The whole idea of mixtapes, like somebody kind of creating their own artwork, so to speak. But also too, I was kind of like this more I got into, I started fragmenting the body off too as well. So it wasn't just kind of contained, whatever. Yeah. And then like I've always made I had a great art education, again in like Akron Art Museum. Akron, like University of Akron, and then with Michael Lordestad and everybody there. You had to do like multiple things. You couldn't be a photographer, be a sculptor, printmaker, bookmaker. What else? There's all kinds of stuff going on. So, and even when I went to grad school, I started doing painting, sculpture, photography, like artist books, because I didn't really quite know what I was going to do after school, but I wanted to make sure that I could like make stuff, because I was fortunate to kind of been teaching ever since I got out of school, so I had the resources to kind of abuse the university, so to speak, whatever. Yeah, and I still broadcast. In fact, there will be broadcasting to the day at the University of Virginia. So I just do that. But also like this went away because when I was doing this kind of street photography, like I was doing other forms of artwork too as well. And so I was doing this kind of sculptural things, whatever. And these were Mansfield, Ohio, like end table stuff. So then I was in the mid '90s. I was working on artwork that was about where the so-called art object was presented in the African American home. And so, end tables, and I did like wall hangings and stuff like that. And so these particular pieces are important to me because this is how I kind of got into cinema or film. And so these kind of look like art end tables, right, Kenny? Yeah. It's like kind of Dutch modernism, that kind of shit. But anyway, these images were interesting because I said we grew up in Mansfield, Ohio, and then by this time, this is '94, all the factories were closing up, and probably one of the biggest employees was the penal institution. And if anybody knows about, if anybody got anybody incarcerated, they might have spent some time at Mansfield, Ohio. Yeah, they might have hated my mom was out. I don't know. But anyway, back, for years, for about a century, we had something called the Ohio State Reformatory, and then they closed that down in '90, and then they built two prisons, Mancy and Rico, or something like that, the Richard County facility. My son's mom worked at Mancy. But so these images formally, they're kind of modern. Kind of like minimalist sculptures and put these kind of like these photographs on them and stuff. And then on the end tables, which I don't have the detail of it here, is pictures of prison guards and school day images of folks who grew up in Mississippi in the 50s. So the whole idea of like coming up north, I got some other films about black migration I'm going to show a clip of next, is that, the whole idea of promise is going up north, things are going to be better. Mm-hmm. And things didn't get better, and the factories closed it up, and then now it's penal institution. So in Mansfield, back in, the early 90s, the more crime in Youngstown, Cleveland, Akron, the more money was coming, and more of our friends were going to be getting jobs and stuff like that. So this kind of catch-24, not even 22, whatever, so to speak, was that crime was good for this particular area. So. And then, like at the time, they were spending more, and still, in even the state of Virginia, they spend more money on the penal institution than they do for schools, whatever, so to speak. So anyway, so that's what this work was about. But that's the content of the work. But what the work was doing, I remember this artist, Isaac Julian, came to Cleveland. Remember we had because you remember that conference and stuff, and Isaac and them all came? And he's a big-time Black British artist, stuff, does film projection. So I remember I was showing him this work, and he was telling me, you should be making films. Because what I was describing was that like somebody would work 5 days a week, get paid on Friday, go to Bing's Furniture. Remember Bing's Furniture? See, look at that, like that Mansfield moan. So go to Bing's Furniture, pick out your furniture, and bring it home. and put it in the house. So what I was describing was, and even like man, like so Dominique was telling me to make films too as well, was that I was describing this time-based stuff. So you got to make films, and then also too, I started making films because I wanted to show how work was performing on the body. So time-based. You know, like I remember in Mansfield, like because y'all remember either the Burger King or McDonald's closed across the street from the bowling alley. Yeah, somebody would go there because people would eat at home all the time. People, and then so my mom would cook 6 days a week. Friday she wouldn't cook because they were tired from the work. So their bodies looked different from Monday to Friday because they had the week off. So I was always kind of paying attention to that, and then the whole idea of the physicality of what labor does to the body, and then how that can only be, and then so I thought talking about making things in time based, so you can see the physicality on the body and how it affects the body, so to speak. So this is a film. I'm going to show a clip of this. So this film called Company Line, and I made a bunch of like 3 films based on the first 3 black neighborhoods of Mansfield, Ohio. So one of them is the Company Line, and which is we're off of Bowman Street, and the people there worked at the steel mill, and there was one called the Camps further up down Bowman Street, and they worked at the steel mill, and there's a place called Watchworks that they were domestic workers and stuff. So when I made this particular film, the Company Line, the streets aren't there anymore. So I had to get these narrators to narrate about Mansfield. So the film is probably the closest thing to a documentary that I ever made. So I had some people kind of talk about the history of what the Company Line, but then I had snowplow truck drivers who always run the streets all the time to talk about where they were from and what jobs they had. So because here's a small clip of it where this like a Lindsay talks about where he used to work at and stuff, and then so it gives it a backstory. So it's kind of like the Pryor joke and also the Fischel and Weiss piece. That little bit of paint there that shows a little bit of the kind of narrative and backstory. I think the sound's kind of low. So. In fact, it didn't snow that winter, so we had to do salting. Yeah. But me and Rob hooked it up, my cousin Rob.
Where'd you work at before here? Bunch of places. Everywhere.
We're maxed out.
Mansfield Tire, Ohio Brass, Bricklayer, Airline One Railroad, Artesian, Westinghouse, garbage truck. My dad owned a garbage rock, scrap yard, ski slope. We're down 2nd Street. Yeah, I had a dog. Just got back my rack.
Yeah, and then also too, like during the odds and stuff, and then you folks who were going to the war were people who were from these kind of small towns where were going to the military. So yeah, that's a scene from Company Line, and then I started making more films about. Well, that film was mostly about black migration, how people got to Mansfield, Ohio, and then so I actually either the snowplow trucks drivers where they worked at and or where they were born and raised and when they got there. And Mansfielders are weird because we're all about time, right? I mean, these guys were saying that I got to Mansfield at 4:07, 1968. So we remember it's like a weird. I remember like my friends up here in Cleveland were like, man, I took them down to Mansfield, and it's like that's where you get it from. Because people like this time is important, so to speak. But anyway, so I was making kind of films about that, so to speak. But also too, I'm still, I'm gonna show like these kind of like my kind of filmmaking practice now, and then also like what the important thing to me is about what the materiality of what things are made with, so to speak, because I come from this kind kind of visual art. And then that last film was shot with 16 millimeter, mini DV, still photography, and it had all kind of stuff into it. And then after a while, I still use a lot of 16 millimeter film, and then also not only what the materialities what it's made with, but what the apparatuses what it's made with. So I like to use these. So like a full magazine of film, which is 400 feet or 133 meters, and it's usually a 10-minute or like 11-minute long take. So now I make these films where like physicality, because I know like the physicality of what the material is like I'm going to use. And this particular film is eerie. It's got 8 10-minute takes and it's basically about black migration. It's about coming up from the south to the north, and I'll show another clip from it, or another object from it like later. But in this particular clip, it's going to be about that dabble. You can remember I showed that image with the paint cans and also the stumps. Mm-hmm. So, and then for me, I was trying to figure out what makes this kind of edit. And then when you're invested with something for 10 minutes, and then you become when you see something for like a long take, you become invested in it. And so one of my favorite artists is a guy named Lav Diaz, this Filipino cat, crazy cat. I mean, this guy makes 9-hour narrative films, and now if it takes 20 minutes for the oxen cart to come up the road, it's going to be 20 minutes for the oxen cart to come up the road. I mean, it's just like long, but you become invested in it. I mean, you become like into the shit, right? You become invested in it. So my strategy was like you see something for like 10 minutes, and then the viewer becomes like invested in it, and then bam, you cut to another cut. So in this particular film, I got my 3 cousins, Ad Swope, Sadie, and Daisy, talking about working at the General Motors factory. And then the next clip, well, I'll explain it like afterwards. Yeah. And it's gonna be low, I think.
Because I actually talked to a guy.
So, and this is the end of the clip.
And then talking, he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm retired." He said, "Good for you." He said, "Because I have 15 years. I can't go nowhere. I can't retire. I can't take the grow into. I can't take the mutual. He said, I am stuck." He said, "Am I angry? Yes, I am angry because I'm losing big time." He said, "I can't do anything. I got to stay here until this plant closes."
Yeah, and then I understand that.
And the General Motors are closed. Did I say that?
But even with my situation, I'm missing the mutual about 4 months.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not angry about it. I'm willing to go somewhere else, wherever they want to send me right now. I'm in the home stretch. I got 23 years, 7 more years I can retire. So it would be ludicrous for me to give up 23 years for $115,000.
Yeah.
It's not going to do me any good.
And then there one time he was here 6 days. Right. 6 days.
It's different
6
for
days.
everybody's situation.
Yeah, everybody got a story. Everybody have a different situation. And it makes me sad.
Yeah, and then so they talk about working at the General Motors factory for like 10 minutes. And it's one of the first times you hear like employees talk about like working in a factory, and they're blaming like kind of management. And then Sadie and Daisy had just retired that Friday, and I thought it on a Sunday in 2009. And they did 30 years.
They both did 30?
Yeah, they did 30 a day. And then the factory closed like a year later, I think, in 2010, right? Yeah.
Oh.
And then, so I was thinking about writing this film, and I was thinking about what can I do next. So then the fact that the viewer has to look at something for 10 minutes, but then also I want the subject matter in the film to be concentrating within the kind of frame for 10 minutes as well. And then so I thought I could, and so I was up in Buffalo, and then I went to see The Tempest, Shakespeare in the Park at night. Shakespeare in the Park, and then I met these 2 actors. I hired them, and I took them to lunch on Tuesday. I hired them Wednesday, got a fight coach on Thursday, and we shot it on Friday. And then the fight coach was saying, "So what do you want them to work with?" I said, "I want them to work with the loudest object you have, the sabers, because the sabers are handmade." And so every time I see a General Motors car, I think of my, Robert Clark, Sadie and Daisy, my Uncle Shep, and Rob, and then Ad Swope working on it. So I always state their DNA is on the General Motors cars. And then the General Motors plant was a stamping plant. There's a Fisher Body plant up here, down here, right? Brooks, in like Brook Park or something. So there's a stamping plant. So so that's the kind of the stump and the paint cans I was showing earlier. It was is that there's a conceptual bridge between one long take to what the next, and then like what those actors are sword fighting for 10 minutes, but they're concentrating within the frame of the film. And so I kind of make films like what my man here said was an abstract, what the artist, and so I kind of make the films like an abstract kind of painter, because where it's all self-referential, where it's all within the frame of the work, so to speak. In this particular film, more labor stuff. Well, this particular film, it's a short film. It's like only 8 hours long, and so it's Park Lanes. And let me just play it. Yeah, play clip it. And it's basically I used to work at Westinghouse. I think we all had factory jobs in the '80s when we came off of college, and that was rough at that. I remember because like I used to make glue, and Harvey Dave and those guys just set me on fire like every day, throw cigarette butts at me because I had paint thinner on me and shit. It was crazy in there. But anyway, I kind of like the whole idea of the big ticket item, and then the whole idea of the kind of justifying kind of an 8-hour-long film. So I wanted to film a full day of work, so to speak. So I got this factory. I finally got. It took like almost 10 years to get a factory. So there's a place near Richmond, Virginia called Cubica, and they make bowling supplies for bowling. They make everything but the pins and balls. And then since I wanted a big ticket item, it's more like a refrigerator coming, start to finish, so to speak. But then I couldn't get permission for that. And then so we shot this thing for 3 days. And then in the South, the factories are 4 days, 10 hours, because it's cheaper for management to have it open for 4 days, 4 days or so. So anyway, so we shot it for 3 days, and then we put it together. And then so after a while, I was filming things that looked like sculpture objects. Like I said, that kind of thing off the kind of like assembly line. Is just I was looking like this particular thing has a kind of weird sculpture, and these kind of tube things can be kind of like minimalist sculptures. So after a while, I was trying to figure out the formal quality. First, I was trying to follow a little narrator around. I was trying to follow her around and stuff because she was fascinating. But then she became my clock in and clock out. But then I just filmed like either African American workers, Laotian, and Vietnamese Americans. They're all working on this particular factory. And shot with a 10mm lens on a black magic pocket camera, like the first version of it. Yeah. So anyway, it's Park Lanes. And then again, like another 10-minute take film. And then I like the whole idea of what these cameras. I'm all about what the materialities and the lens. For me, I got films where I have a crew and actors and stuff, but I like just like a painter would go out with the easel, the canvas, the paint, the brushes, and for me, I like to go out with the tripod, the lens, the camera, and the film stock, and I like to kind of make films like that. And then this film's called Consular Park, and I remember I forgot that there was a Virginia primary in 2016, so I had to bike to to my polling station, Consular Park, and then I was one of the last ones to vote, and I was like, I can make a 13-hour film. Look out! I was all excited and shit. But then, the media, and then so I decided to make a kind of a, just long takes film. But what this film I was trying to do, trying to shoot it all with telephoto lenses. And then I was trying to kind of make a kind of a flicker film, where the subject matter would be erased by kind of humanity in a weird way, and then kind of going back to it. And then for me it was perfect too, because we couldn't record audio right where she was because they were giving out names and addresses and shit. And then so we had to have the mic somewhere else in the room, so it was fine. So it became this film where I had to kind of put two together, and then so it became 8 takes of African American poll workers. And then in Charlottesville, it's 20% black. but the people who run government are, like it's fascinating because what the people who want democracy to work the most is the black folks where democracy is failing the most because people can't get out of the way. And so I remember, I didn't think about this being like, the Hillary and Trump thing. For me, it was about going to the poll booth in 2008 when Barack Obama was elected. But anyway, there's like 8 takes of kind of portraits of African American poll workers. And then some other, like a few other kind of formal qualities. I still treat like film like kind of painting and drawing. And this particular film is called The Island of St. Matthews, and it's about my family from Columbus, Mississippi. And then they had a flood down there in 1973. And when I was asking my Aunt Ree where all of the heirlooms, where's all the old wood images, and they said, oh, we lost them in the flood, so to speak. So I made this film about the dredging of the Tombigbee River. So it makes this fictional island. So like I wanted to film around the island in one 10-minute take. So we had to find, and then so for me, it's all about figure ground relationship. So of course this guy is like his water skiing, but the main subject is the ground, is with the landscape. So I wanted to mark the landscape just by having just like a figure in the foreground, but it's all about going around the river and the dredging. So we had to find, so when my family and stuff were young, they would go boat and fish and stuff, but the river in Columbus, Mississippi is completely segregated. Like the kids we used for the film, they'd never been on a river before. We had to find it took I stayed down there extra 10 days to get an African American to water ski, and we had to train the guy. Like we had to find a coach and shit. And then like he was a drummer, and that cat couldn't walk for 2 days after that. Man, he was so. And then we were riding around the two boat like drinking and shit. And he didn't say a word. Yeah, he was so tired. Just kicking it. But anyway, so we did it like 3 times. And then so for me, like it was a way to kind of show the river, but have this kind of figure ground relationship. So we're gonna go. I feel bad for him. Every time I see this. Man, that cat didn't say a word to me.
How long was he on those skis?
When I shot this, he had just got on that skis like 5 minutes before that. I said, well, let's go. Because we didn't want him to forget anything. and we worked that cat to death. I mean, we gave him a break every now and then. We had to kind of put the boat, whatever. But no, man.
He was like
there's art to be made. But then he'd fall, and then so we would start again from that area. So we went around the whole the dredging, so to speak.
Whoa!
No, he's fine. But we'd go back in him because he couldn't move them legs. Yeah, he couldn't move them legs. And then here was a film I made a couple of years ago that I wanted to, in 2020, it was like, I just got back from Berlin. It was the COVID, and it was the Floyd kind of test. And then so I wanted to show something that was about that summer. So I shot like peonies, flowers, because they remind me of the summer. Because my mom used to have them.
Yeah.
And then so they would remind me when school was out. And then we shot fireflies. And then for June and for July we shot the Black Lives Plaza in DC. And again, it's the figure ground. So it's him, and so I'd hired just kind of like the roller skater, and then I'm on rollerblades the first time in about 20 years, and that was dicey. But I mean the road was rough, so we only skated on the I's and S of lies, I think, so to speak. So so anyway, it's him, but it's actually about the landscape that he's having, which is the Black Lives Matter kind of plaza, which it was felt like a park, so it felt kind of cool. So we were there, so that's that. And so now I'm just going to kind of talk about film. So I have a whole, so now I'm going to talk about this kind of multiple bodies of work that I have. I have like a bunch of things going on at once. So I make films about Mansfield and Cleveland and Columbus, Mississippi. and Charlottesville. I guess two places right now. But in these films about Mansfield are about re-representation, about things and objects that are, and folks that were filmed or re-represented in Mansfield. So with this film is called IFO. The most credible UFO sighting in the United States is the Coin incident, where these Air National Guard helicopters were flying over Mansfield, and they see this red cigar thing, so they kind of chased it. Then they burned all this fuel, and they figured out that it was according to my Uncle Ples, he said it was probably picking up hookers in Indianapolis. But but who do you want to believe, right? But anyway, so we got the, but it's also about the kind of the black griot too, because there's this black cab driver that I also like interviewing the film, and then he talks about seeing a flying saucer. So didn't know whole idea about who you're going to believe, so to speak. So the film's about that. There's a film. We used to have this super corrupt. We still do. Not as bad as it used to be, but we had the super corrupt police department, sheriff department, Sheriff Wyco, and they made all these like stag films and stuff. It's crazy. But also, they made a film. They like arrested a black female for shoplifting, and then made her star in her own PSA about shoplifting. So they did this kind of stuff. And then this one guy in Mansfield has this footage, but he won't let me. That guy's nah. But anyway, but this is a film kind of about that, whatever. And this boxer used to live there, a guy named Art McKnight, and he had this famous fight with Sugar Ray Leonard in '78. Yeah.
Down in Dayton.
Yeah, down in Dayton. And so I shot that film, and then it went 8 rounds, and so I have what the Lydia Hicks here, who was in the film. She helped with the sound, and she's holding up, and she's being a ring girl in the 8 parks. In Mansfield, Ohio, basketball was king, and I think when my son was young, what they call it Southside, the north side of town, but we used to call it the names of the parks. And those were the name of John Tye, Hamilton, King Street, whatever. So, like she's holding up these kind of ring signs as if she's a ring girl, but it's kind of a protest. Because Art McKnight, the fight was good because he cut Sugar Ray. And then, I wanted to get found footage of what the fight, and Art McKnight said, you're not going to find it. Because Sugar Ray Leonard was cut, and it was the first big fight Sugar Ray had. In fact, the criticism of I don't know if people know what Sugar Ray Leonard. In 1976 was probably one of the best teams in the United States was the '76 Montreal Summer Games, the U.S. boxing team. It was like Aaron Pryor, the Spinks brothers, Sugar Ray was in it, and there's some other fighters in it too as well. So, and Sugar Ray Leonard was the darling, and then for a while, people he was getting criticized because his fights were white and light, basically. So Art McKnight was the first African American he fought, and then Art had him, but they called the fight, and during the fight, my Uncle Wink was down there, but he said he was drunk. But the people from the bootleg house were all down there, so I got them to tell me. But Art protested at the fight because he jumped up on people were throwing chairs in the ring, and then they called the fight, but he wasn't really that hurt. And then Art is an amazing man. He would not give it up. He said the best man won that day. And I tried to get him to talk about the protest, but he wouldn't. So the ring girl is holding up the sign as if it was a protest. So, it's being a fight. So, but anyway, I hired, but in the film, I had Art's voice, but I hired a Golden Gloves boxer to kind of go around the rounds with. So that's that film. I found out recently that my uncle was in the gospel choir, Uncle Robert. Didn't know it. So he recorded Traveling Shoes, his record. So the film's about this re-representation, about this kind of famous gospel group from my hometown. Now I'm making this film. So with this film, it's brand spanking new. It's called Banging on the Bars and Rhythm. And again, the Ohio State Reformatory now is a film set. So the famous film, The Shawshank Redemption, which I've never seen in its entirety.
I know. God, I love it. I've seen 20 times.
What?
Leave me alone. But anyway, but that was shot there. A couple of Sly Stallone films were shot there. Like Judas and the Black Messiah was shot there. And my favorite film, which is unwatchable but watchable, is Air Force One. Love it. With Harrison Ford playing the president.
It's been a long. Okay.
It's insane. It can't happen, right? But it's insane. but anyway, the Soviet Gulag is the prison in my hometown, and then like that's a line from the script, whatever, so to speak. Yeah. So anyway, so you know what was like what films were made in Mansfield, or what people on TV. So I know what kind of strategy. And then so I have a whole practice is where like it's where I make props for films too as well. And then this was a film about a funeral home, so I made the funerary headrest. Yeah, and then this is the beginning of that film, Airy. This is a fictional billboard. At the beginning of that film, Airy, with the GM employees talking. The beginning of the film is these billboard folks hanging up this billboard sign. And it's based on billboards that were put in the South to advertise factories up north for people to move up north. There was never a Volkswagen factory in Ohio. You guys know that. Actually, I think the first time I gave this talk in the state of Ohio.
Is that Uncle Plez?
Yes, Plez, yeah. So my Uncle Plez was in the Army in the 60s, and he was posing by a Volkswagen. So I just made this like billboard, because it's based on him. And here it is in the museum. I made a film in Cleveland about people stealing manhole covers. Nate? Yes. Yeah. Oh, so the lady. Yeah. So I made the tools. Yeah, and the guy, and I remember Khalil was filming this guy stealing aluminum, and he tried to chase me with a hammer. And we tried to reenact that, but I didn't use it. But anyway, so I made these kind of props for this particular film. This is the Island St. Matthews, where my granddad started this church, St. Matthew's Church, and they didn't have a bell. The bell didn't work, so I made a bell for the church.
Oh, that's the bell.
So to speak. And then I still make these binoculars. The Westinghouse factory where I used to work at made binoculars during the World War II effort, and so I got them on eBay and cast them out of bronze and rubber. And so every time I go to a different state, I have a relative and somebody I don't know actually hold up, do bird watching films. I just took my daughter to LA, and so we went to like 8 states, I think. So I filmed her with these binoculars as well. And I made one in Michigan to this summer. And then also they made irons too as well. So I made this film based on. So now I make the props that don't work now, like the binoculars don't work, the irons don't work. But I used to make things that did work now, so now I'm into that. But I like to cast, like cast things in bronze and rubber. But now I like to cast things in rubber now, so I can make multiples. And then of course the bronze cast, and we just built a new foundry, so it's just easier for me to do now. And and then I found out that they made a meat tenderizer in Mansfield. So
Really?
So yeah. So I had that. So I just bronze casted that and shot this film. And now I just make things that I just find things from Mansfield. So I bought this tire on the eBay and casted it, whatever. It's called Mansfield Deluxe. And then I found out last summer that my granddad started making railroad ties when he was 13 at a place called Box Mill. So I casted this long ass, big ass, heavy ass railroad tie. Thanks to Lydia. She helped me work on it too as well. That thing, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that, because that's brand new and it's sitting in my office. Although I sleep on it in my office.
You sleep on it?
I slept on it once.
No comment.
No comment. So anyway. So real quick. So like I have another body of work that I don't do as much. I do have some stuff now, but I like to use archival film for that kind of make archival films or use archival films to make films and call my own, I guess so to speak. So it's like using kind of like the found object. And I'm just going to show a clip from one film that people would know. This film is called Emergency Needs, And I got commissioned by the Rotterdam Film Festival to make a film based on Gus Van Sant, the American filmmaker. And Gus Van Sant has a trilogy of films. Shit, you may know. Jerry, Elephant. It's a Last Days, the Kurt Cobain film. Last Days.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember Jerry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We saw that in Rotterdam. Yeah. So in these films about Gus Van Sant, by talking to him, he said he wanted to make something because like Elephant was based on the Columbine, and Last Days is based on Kurt Cobain, with like suicide. So the films are based on what people know but don't know. And so I was trying to figure out that. And so what I want to do, so I based something on the Cleveland Shootout, aka the Glenville Uprising in '68. And then I got a hold of like the what's the school in University Heights, the college?
John
Carroll, yeah. So John Carroll has archived film footage from, I think, NBC and ABC affiliates. And so then I got all this stuff of Mayor Carl Stokes during the uprising. Because after Huff, it was good saying this in Cleveland, because I say this all over the world, people don't know what it is, I'll explain it. But anyway, so he, he was dealing with this hostile press, this white hostile press, and then so I liked his performance, so I paid an actress to kind of show his performance. So here, just like I show you a clip of it. It filmed 7 minutes, but I'm going to show like the first 3 minutes, I guess.
I believe that the crisis has passed. However, there is still cause to be concerned. I base this on conferences all day here at City Hall and out in the city with National Guard officers, police officials, city councilmen, representatives of the Negro community, and other people. As I make this judgment, I wish to pay tribute to both the great desire of the Negro community that order be restored and the ability and effectiveness of the Cleveland Police and National Guardsmen operating under trying and somewhat unique circumstances. We must, however, remain prepared to meet special circumstances that could arise following this period of high tension. Frustrated rebellion or reaction of the deprived population to an unresponsive city government. Now, that was not reflected in last night's incident, and it would have to be, at least at this point, last night's incident would still have to be viewed in the light of the small and determined group that were involved. Well, I can't guess if they're voted, but we can only draw the conclusion from the fact that they were armed and nothing that I could report to you at all. Nation
black nationalist plot, perhaps, that didn't come off to the full extent that it was planned?
Well, I would have no facts with which.
What was the motive as you saw it?
Is there any order on the shooting of looters? Well, you'll have to talk with General Del Corso about that, because under the statute, when the guards are called in, the chief executive of the government involved is able to describe in general what his wish is for the guard, but it specifically states in the statute that the mode and means of carrying it out are the prerogative of the guard itself.
I have
requested
that there be no looting.
People go home.
Similarly, I place my own personal
principles
upon
life
as having priority to property.
Yeah, and then it kind of goes on, and then I guess you guys know the story. Is that the police were roguely shooting white police were shooting blacks in the neighborhood. So Stokes had to just have black police officers, black National Guard, and black state troopers patrol the Glenville the area. So that's how that film kind of ends. And then so he talks about so then the fact that I like how cool and calm he was with this hostile press. So the reason why I got this actress to play him, because like there's this famous painting by Robert Rauschenberg, this American pop artist, called Folkdom 1 and 2, and it's in the Museum of Modern Art. And there's Folkdom 1 and 2, and they're kind of similar, but when you look at the two paintings, you look. I mean, it's got political stuff in it, but you look for how close they are similar. So I wanted to have two, some actors play Stokes and have them back to side by side, so you would see the similarities. But then also you couldn't get past the politics of it. So that's the kind of strategy that film. But with the strength of making found footage films and using found footage things as scripts, and and use them in films. For the last 12 years, I've been working with the smartest person in Charlottesville is Claudine Harrell. She teaches African American Studies and labor history, and we've been making these films called Black Fire projects, which are about the history of African Americans at the university, and then using archived what material to make our scripts, and we show some examples. This is Vivian Gordian, and so she started the African American Studies program. Those that know about African American kind of history, that's like the Julian Bond, who was a colleague of mine when he passed away. In fact, the only time I saw Harry Belafonte when he was at Julian Bond's retirement party, I about fainted. And I tried to touch him appropriately and inappropriately. Harry Belafonte, fine, mama. But anyway, and then Claudrina got obsessed by what she'd been through, and started an African American Studies program there, and she started finding this archive with material. And I love this image because it's probably the only photograph since 1839 that photographed two African Americans playing foosball. And I don't know. I hope so. I'm going to bed with that. But anyway, so we started making this film based on Vivian Gordon, and we used her speech and stuff in it. So I'm gonna show a couple of clips in it, and so here's some of my students. So we cast by hairstyles, so you have an afro to be in the film. And then for this particular film, we actually hired a hairstylist and all that kind of stuff. And then so we used the drama department for costumes and stuff to speak to as well. And then that's the actress Erin Stewart, who's been in a bunch of my films before, and she's playing like Vivian Gordon. So we're just reenacting the foosball photograph, and then we're acting the kind of cocktail party that you saw in the film. Well, we have a bunch of them. With this particular film, it's based on James Roebuck, who was the first African American PhD student at the University of Virginia, and then he led the anti-Vietnam War protests there, and we did this. So the last film is the sugar-coated arsenic film. You know, like just what the foosball is based on, as if somebody found a documentary that was shot in the 70s. Because I remember when Claude Drina was trying to look for like images, she found all these films, and I was like, oh shit, like somebody made the film, but it was basically films that weren't returned to libraries. Because you know, like back then you check out films and stuff. So we said, well, we'll just make a film if somebody found a document. In this particular film, we made a film if somebody found part of a biopic. So we had this rear projection driving thing. So basically, James Roebuck and President Shannon, who was progressive. So, like the University of Virginia, like a lot of the Ivy schools, didn't let blacks and females in until 1971. So I always tell my students we're only 50 years ahead of the Taliban.
Wow.
You know, if you kind of think about it, right? You know. So anyway, so James Roebuck, excuse me, like he wrote. So him and Edgar Shannon was the president. Excuse me. Well, they drove to D.C. to give the note of protest to Congress, so to speak. So the film is this road movie, based about that. And then this film here at Pasadena State is about Kent Merritt, who was the first African-American scholarship athlete, played on the football team at the University of Virginia. And then so we use old costumes and then actually athletes and non-athletes to play parts and stuff for it. Excuse me. What this film's called How Can I Ever Be Late? It's based on the African. Oh, thank you. Oh, look at this. Look at you there, young man. That's awesome. Yeah. So anyway, there's this like joke. So the black students. So like what the university was progressive in the 70s, which is hard to believe now. But anyway, this black students would get like big musical acts like Sly Stone to come here. Come to the university. So Sly Stone came, but he was upset because the students picked him up in some small car, and it was too cold or something. Not like that. So we reenacted. So we had, again, we cast with afros, and we had like kids dressed up like rock stars to come off a plane. But actually, the real story of that story is that Sly Stone was always late all the time, and then Sly Stone would be docked for pay. So what Sly Stone did was he had a stunt Sly come, because the one so we get a lot of stories from the alumni. So the one guy said, man, when I went to the concert, that ain't the brother we picked up from the airport. So instead of getting docked for pay, if he was always late, he would have a stunt Sly, or whatever, so to speak. So we found that out about a couple years ago. We did this film. There's this film called Black Bus Stop. So there is this area on campus where a lot of blacks would gather, called the Black Bus Stop. So we made this magical realism step show where we had the African American Greeks pre-formed their steps. With this film, we did another magical realism film where there was this, it's called Hampton. There is a historical black gospel group called Black Voices. We talked to some alumni, and they went to Hampton, and they felt like rock stars. They came back, so we had the bus driver sing them back to safety, so to speak. We did this film. They had an African American newspaper at the time called Pride, so we made a film based on the newspaper. Man, we got a ton of stuff. We made a film based Gospel Hill, which is the neighborhood where the University of Virginia Hospital was built on, which was an old black neighborhood. So we made a film about hospital employees, and we used a scene from one of my favorite films, the Mac, like the Michael Campus Mac. There's a great scene where the great artist, the Richard Pryor, is talking to Max Julian like in this bar. So instead of the pimp stuff, we switched the pimp stuff to hospital employee stuff. And this film we just showed at Black Star in Philadelphia this past weekend. We found the first African American female scholastic athlete, Paulette Jones Morant, and she waxes poetically about how she started field hockey there. And at the time, last spring, there was a set of twins, the Barnett twins. One was on the rowing team, and one's on the lacrosse team. Their dad was Fred Barnett, used to be a wide receiver for the Eagles. So we did that film. And then we just recently shot a film based on African American attire from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it's all based on this particular like image. And then so we have them, because my colleague, she went to college in the 90s, and called Junior Harold, and then so we have them sitting on the lawn in 70s clothes and 80s clothes, and then they're wearing 90s clothes going to a 90s house party. So we just shot that in March. So we'll cut that this summer. Real quick, this is the end of it. So now I do projection work a lot now. I do a lot of gallery projection stuff. So if I do projection work, now it's always the subject matter creates the visuals. So here, the late great James Williams, like Regina's great grandfather, was blowing out exactly 93 candles. Wow. So he basically makes the film dark, whatever, so in the gallery it becomes dark. And this is at MoMA. Oh, no, it's at the Whitney right now, playing part of a group show. Yeah. This particular, and then like I'm a moon whore, and then more like an eclipse whore. Love the eclipse, love the moon. But anyway, so years ago I rigged my 16 millimeter ARES up to the University of Virginia telescope. So I've been filming the moon. So in this particular scene, it goes from, I think, moon to space and space to moon. So the gallery becomes dark and light within the, like structure of the gallery. And oh yeah, and here's some more eclipse films. Yeah, like again, like this is Condor shot in Chile, and this is probably one that was shot in North Carolina during this 2017. And I will be here April 8th.
I was gonna say April 8th.
So I'm gonna have a crew in Mexico, Illinois, and I'll be in Cleveland. So we're gonna film the eclipse in 3 different time zones.
Oh wow.
So we're working on that now. So yeah, so that's in Chile, and then that's in North Carolina, and then this was a great show because it was like, I don't know, 6 meters tall, and then it becomes like, becomes bright, and then and as soon as the solar eclipse happens, it becomes dark and comes bright again. So I like the subject matter to produce the light and color within the gallery structure. I mean, there's a lot of other films that play in galleries too as well, but once I designed it, like I wanted that to happen. And then shot this at the Largo Bhutan, was shot on the Panama Canal, and then the locks and dams like open up and it becomes dark and it becomes light again, so to speak. Yeah, because then I shot the lock and dam in Columbus, Mississippi, like a Stennis lock and dam on the Tombigbee River before, and then now I'm doing sound stuff too as well. So with this piece is called Opal, and I remember being in high school where the Army recruiter, and I had already gotten college, but they wanted me to see the Army what recruiter, and he was promising African Americans that if you buy a car in Panama and West Germany, it's cheaper to ship it back. And Kevin Taylor went to Panama and shipped the car back.
So that was the incentive?
Yeah, the incentive. Yeah. So when I was in Germany, I have like this kind of model, like Opel cars. So now it's more audio. So on one side of the gallery, it's the Opel car in Spanish, and the other one, it's in Germany. In German, yeah. Germany in German. Yeah. And now, in the end, but this film is Hazel, based on Eddie Hazel, the guitarist for Funkadelic. He has a 10-minute solo for Maggot Brain. And my daughter, Matilda Watson, she did the costumes for it. And on one side is with the melody for Maggot Brain, and then the other side is it was a solo. So when you're in a gallery where you hear the whole thing, but you don't see the whole thing because you got to go around the wall. And the story was like Maggot Brain is from Funkadelic, and I always thought that George Clinton told Eddie Hazel, "Oh man, your mama died," and then play, like solo. But apparently he told him to play as if your mama died.
Oh.
But I like the first version because I like the fact that when Eddie Hazel went into the studio, he rocked out like maggot brain, and he brought his mom back to life. So I always wanted art to kind of bring back my son and my dad and my other relatives, so to speak. So the whole idea, like that's that kind of the gist behind that film. It was that the art object is this element for like resurrection. So like that's Hazel. And then real correct, yeah. And I still crush. I haven't crushed a car in a long time. So I usually crush General Motors cars because like I said, like this. Just like the plant in Mansfield, Ohio was a stamping plant. So I like to refigure in this particular film, like they drop a 6-ton thing on these like cars to flatten them, and this was in Ontario, Canada, where they just kind of crush the cars. So I have a whole series of car crushing films, and because I just want to repurpose them and restamp them, so to speak. And so I have a series of that, and then this is the last slide, and this is us when we were in Cleveland, but we were photographing the prison uprising in Lucasville. So this picture was shot in April 22, and that's the late great Dominique Brown. And so I like to show this slide because again, you can't do this stuff alone. You got to have your friends, you got to have your family support, and your ex-professors floating around. I mean, because one should never think that you can do all this stuff by yourself and get through life by yourself. You have a lot of people in your corner helping you and encouraging you. So that's it. So any questions, comments? Anybody? Yeah, cool.
So there was a point where you were talking about filmmaking, and then you made some objects.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Where the first set of objects you looked like you made them by hand?
Yeah.
It was like blacksmithing.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
I'm assuming the other
It was
projects were cast.
Yeah, it was made by hand too as well. So I make the molds and stuff too as well. Yeah. So
how did that happen?
Well, I still do. Yeah. I mean, like I said, like look at the top of it. Is I did photography in school, but I did other forms of art too as well, and I still do. But I just like to mostly do films, and then I make some objects, so to speak. Only like objects that are from my hometown and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks.
I didn't know anything about you.
Well, that makes two of us.
And the fact that you were filming labor, I was just like really into labor.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that relates so much to the roots of this country and what's going on now and capitalism and all that other stuff.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you were filming it and then you actually started making, laboring. Did you ever collaborate with any of those factory, the laborers that you filmed or anything in that way?
Nah, just getting permission and stuff. Nah, it's just too much. Because like now I'm supposed to be shooting this guy in Mansfield, Ohio. But I mean, you gotta realize folks got real jobs and real lives and family like that.
Unless you're paying them,
Yeah, so that kind of thing. So so you're not the most important person to have in that person like that day. But no, I just mostly collaborated with it was like my colleagues and a few other kind of artist friends and stuff. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So what inspires your subject matter, and how do I know some of your process and I'm still confused by it?
So again,
because I don't understand the whole how you script something after you've been inspired, and like how do they meet?
Well, yeah, that's a good question because it mostly, what formal qualities kind of, they're probably more important. Although the work's got this kind of political stuff to it, but it's just basically light, color, shape, sound, like this kind of formal qualities and stuff that I try to exercise every year. So right now I'm doing these things called, like I was working, there's Norman Lewis painting in the art museum called Alabama, and it's black and white. And then if you film and that still of the prison from the Air Force One, whatever, it just he puts stuff in the right side of the frame, like the image makes noise. So now I'm doing that now, formally. So it just depends on what I'm trying to exercise formally that year, so to speak. And then, so that's what I kind of script out.
So it's based on curriculum?
No, it's based on how it's going to look or sound, so to speak. Yeah, just kind of formal quality, so to speak. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Oh, technical question. Are you digital now? And if so, when did you make the switch, or do you use both?
I do. I like, the 16 millimeter. I like the cameras, and they're just not. I mean, I have a Blackmagic Ursa. I have like $20,000 worth of worth of HD cameras in my office, but I just don't like them. The older, huh?
Do you lend them?
Students. Well, not the student. Students because I would never get that thing back. And my man Khalil would get upset. But no, it depends on the subject matter. Right now, the subject, just that I'm working on is it needs these cameras and these apparatuses and these lenses and the film stock. So now I'm dealing with this really high contrast stock that renders skin tones like Kerry James Marshall painting. And then so I'm just working with that right now. And I can't get that with the HD because they have this kind of dynamic range shit, whatever. But I can light it to look like that. But somehow it's funny because we do those we do those black fire films, and we shoot an HD version of it. And even Hazel, I shot all kinds of versions of it. But I just went with the high contrast version of it, so, But it just depends on the subject matter. I go back to the core because it's what materials do. And for a while, I was using like mini DV, really cheapest one, because it was DAT recording audio. So if I wanted to record something, I would use HD or mini DV or something like that. But if I wanted to expose something, and that's what film does, it exposes, the silver highlight crystals, the light, and makes those kind of images. So I want to expose things, so I use film, so to speak. So I just do what the materials, like I use like acrylic that does something, I use for oil, So would that be, it depends on what the subject matter, calls for, whatever. But yeah, I'm old school. But it's just the HD cameras. I'm like, it's like I have them and they don't feel right. I mean, I will. I mean, But I just like the other kind of cameras. And then for the Eclipse, I have to get Super 8 now because you can't get good 16. Because there haven't been a movie planet there haven't been a movie camera made on planet Earth since 2014. And and then so all the ones. I mean, I have Bolexes, and those things are workhorses. Those things are 60 years old. But they had their life. But film's coming back. Because the fashion industry is using it. And there's 3 more labs open up in New York. There's 4 more labs open up in London. So the fashion industry is really into film now, so to speak. The labs are packed. But I just like the cameras though because they're so ergonomical, so to speak. Anybody else? Yeah. Oh, yes, sir.
All right. So Kevin, I'm coming from as an artist's point of view, perspective.
Well, that's really hostile today. And like this environment.
Yeah, that's right. As an artist, you always have a signature.
Mm-hmm.
That when they look at your work, without even looking at the signature, they can tell, oh, this work is from Kevin. Oh, this work is from, and I'm looking at, I know, this actually doesn't take just a minute to take a picture, because sometimes even your position, the way you curve yourself, you're looking at, the perspective, the landscape, just like you said, and so all those things are actually factors. But I just want to know who is Kevin, when it comes to photography, like.
Yeah, you gotta get meta. You gotta get meta.
He said meta.
What do you say?
I don't need to look under the picture before I know this is Kevin. I should be able to tell, oh, I know, right, this is from Kevin, this is from so and so. So I just want to know what actually is, who is Kevin, what's his signature?
It's pretty simple. It's really frontal, formally composed, shallow depth of field. I don't know.
Abstract, right? Abstract. My question is kind of abstract.
I guess if you look at all the crap, stuff I made, I guess you can find kind of, and there's somebody doing that right now, like Terry Francis is doing this book and stuff. I hope it's changing. It's probably not. I'm just doing the same shit.
I'd like to do the same stuff every year.
Yeah.
It's like cheaper. And shoot, Michael's writing poetry now. It's like, man, I want to kind of move to that. It's cheaper. You got low overhead. But, oh man, I don't know.
Scream out of this.
Yeah, like minimalist, strip, late modernist, black.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and even the moon stuff. It's like all about like blackness. It's like, so I'm into like again, like Norman, like what, like the Alabama with the painting in the museum. I mean, I like blackness isn't exposure. It's just like, like I'm exposed, like I shot that brothel in Mansfield, and it's all dark and coming in the light, stuff like that. So, hopefully I don't know. You should sit with my mom for like, and she couldn't stop talking. I mean, I'm sure there's a sign. I mean, and I don't know. There's got to be something. Huh?
You've never thought about that.
I mean, it'd be nice to think about it, and so I can be safe. Go back into. I'll just do the same shit I did 2 years ago. But damn, I think about it. I mean, give me a second. Yes. There's somebody hand up over here. Yeah. There's a man.
Actually, so I had a similar question.
Yeah.
Or maybe or a comment and then a question.
Yeah. I'll
Two. So one, when did you come out of OU?
When? 90.
Okay. About that. And then two, I was wondering, like I saw the picture at the beginning of you as a child.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is that when you got into art? Like,
No, I didn't get art until I got to college.
So like,
I was like
so
19.
when did you decide that you wanted to be an artist?
I was like 19, 18. I don't know.
And what
it
was
like
the catalyst?
Catalyst, I painted plastic GM car parts for 12 weeks in the summer. And I respect it, but I didn't want to do it. And I figured I might as well buckle down and pay attention to school and shit. Yeah. But I don't know. I was a father as a teenager. I had I have a massive speech impediment, which is better now. And I think I got into art, and this may help. Yeah. I wanted to be political science or botany, but I didn't have good grades in high school. I was afraid to speak at certain times. It was just like this kind of thing, whatever. And then I still won't read in public because of my speech impediment. And then so I think, this may be sappy, but I think the art kind of gave it a voice, I guess, so to speak. Gave it something else to kind of, so people can give something else, so like the object could communicate, maybe. Like somebody help me out, maybe. So I think that might have, so I think that's, and then so once I got kind of comfortable and at it, doing it, and then I just kept maybe doing it or whatever. And then it was like, school was cool. I liked how Michael Lewis had, it had lofts downtown Akron. The lifestyle of an artist was like, it was a lifestyle. And I knew it was hard work, but I just liked the lifestyle of it. And then so I thought I could teach, and then I could provide for my son. I was, I could stay in the art and stuff, and have this kind of, for me, time was more important than anything. And then it seemed like art, and then the whole idea of thinking about all this stuff all the time. And I don't know. It seemed like it would be kind of important. I think. I don't know. I just made that. Yeah.
I would say, and this is my first time seeing your work outside of the other work that I'm privileged to see in the background of your daughter. And what I noticed, the thread that I noticed, is just this treatment and this documentation of our experiences. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you're talking the formal qualities that you learn as artists also, but the subject matter is so just unapologetically black life. And I think that's
I mean, me, yeah. Yeah.
Things being, with history being erased in certain spots, documenting real Black life is important. There's not enough of that. We see a artificial, a version in the media.
Yeah, well,
So this,
I know there's all that stuff on in Florida and even in Charlotte and even in Virginia and stuff. I mean, like I have a 6'4" white male colleague that the Board of Visitors said he was a diversity hire. So I don't know what they're saying about me.
Why, because he's tall?
Say what?
No, well, because what he's writing about slavery and stuff, and then I guess the guy didn't know he was white or black or something like that. So I know they're saying that about him. I know they're saying something about me, whatever. But I mean, I just keep grinding, right? But I mean, the thing is, like, I'm making things up. I mean, they're coming from things reality, but I'm collaging these things together, and it's interesting too because my work's being archived at the Academy in Los Angeles, and then they're asking me the same thing. And I don't know what this shit. I have like miles of footage out there. I don't know what they're doing. And and then so they're trying to figure out what and then so maybe I'm getting to the point where I have to answer these questions, whatever. Like 58 or something like that, So I don't, so yeah. I mean, yeah. It's a lot.
How do you see the films? Can it be on the website?
I mean, I'll give you links to it. I don't have a website. Yeah.
You have a, you mentioned the flood of the Tom Bigby.
Yeah.
74.
Yeah, 74.
One of the things that was lost was our family pictures.
Yeah.
Does that influence your work at all? The fact that we don't have that. I mean, I've never seen a picture of my parents when they were kids.
No. So that.
You never have?
Yeah. So that Island of St. Matthews, the film with the bell and like more scary. Yeah. I think it was the absence of our. That wanted me to make that film. Yeah. They wanted me to make something about. I mean, like that was the point of departure to kind of get to that. Yeah. So every now and then, like it's, like art that's made, like like the boxing film, whatever. But it was the kind of the stuff, like the sirens or the stuff that was lost too as well. I'm trying to I don't know, I'm trying to fill in the gap, but talk about the gaps, I guess, so to speak. But man, you guys are tough in Cleveland. Man, they didn't say anything in Australia, didn't they?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for